A little kindergarten boy I know was begging to eat the dessert his mother had ordered. My tiny grandson, sitting right in front of me, should be around the same age as him. Despite having a kid's meal in front of him, his tummy was growling, indicating he was hungry and wanted to share his food with his mom. My name is Elizabeth, and I am 65 years old. My husband, Jason, of the same age, works as a private taxi driver, and I am employed in a company cafeteria. We live together, just the two of us, but we used to live with our only daughter, Alice. Alice was a good-natured child, but she was a bit shy and quiet, and even when she turned 30, she was the kind of girl who didn't have a boyfriend. Around that time, when Jason was working as a limo driver, Alice had a chance to deliver an item Jason had forgotten, which led her to be noticed by the son of a company executive who was a regular customer. Their relationship quickly progressed from dating to engagement, then to marriage, and she found herself marrying into a wealthy family. Her husband, Richard, is a tall, high-income, highly educated man who is on the fast track in his career. But he's a down-to-earth, good guy who doesn't let it get to his head. Moreover, around the time we were nearing retirement, he generously helped us out. He gave Jason financial support to start his own taxi business, and he arranged for me to get a job in a company cafeteria he knew. We are really indebted to our son-in-law. A year later, after she got married, she gave birth to a lovely boy, Glenn. The baby we saw at the hospital was very lively and cute, and she looked very happy. We were all wrapped in happiness. That was the last time we saw my daughter and grandson. Afterwards, despite our attempts to reach out, it seems that Alice was too busy with motherhood to respond properly, and he said that they were struggling daily and hoped for our patience until things settled down. Then, just like that, a pandemic broke out, and years passed without us being able to see them. We felt lonely, but we tried not to worry, thinking that no news is good news. I wonder if we'll be able to meet for New Year's this year. Today is my day off. I was lining up last year's New Year cards on the table. I was checking the names and the number of people I was going to send them to. I let out a sigh. Whether it's because they know that my husband, a taxi driver, is busy during holidays like New Year's, my daughter and her family never come. You might think I could just go to them, but since we've been asked to wait, I can't just go see them on my own. The only time I get to see my daughter and grandson's faces is in the once-a-year New Year's cards they send. The cards have photos taken at a studio. It's a rare chance to see their faces, but it always irks me a bit to see them with formal, nervous expressions and clothing. I want to see what you all look like in your daily life. The photo in last year's New Year's card was just like the ones from every other year, even though the cards I received from colleagues and friends featured pictures of their children beaming. Oh well, what happens in other households is their business, and what happens in ours is ours. In about an hour, my husband, who was on the night shift, will finish work and come home. He requested a hot pot for dinner because it's cold due to the snow today, so I suppose I should start preparing lunch soon. As I tidied up the New Year's cards and rolled up my sleeves, that's when it happened. Ding dong. The intercom rang. I hadn't ordered anything, nor had I arranged to meet anyone. What could it be? With a question mark hanging over my head, I quietly opened the door. There, standing in the falling snow, were my daughter, who looked a bit worn out, and my grandson, who'd grown so much, side by side. It's been a while, Mom. What are you doing here all of a sudden? If you were coming, you should have told me. Well, come in anyway. It's cold, isn't it? I invited them in and closed the front door. There were many droplets of water on their shoulders. As I handed them a towel and beckoned them inside, that's when it happened. She placed her hand on the entrance frame and bowed her head so low that it seemed like it might scrape the floor. What are you doing? Please, Mom, I need you to look after Glenn for a while. The unexpected words caught me off guard. After asking again, it turned out that her husband was working remotely and he found it distracting to have a small child around. She wanted me to look after him until his working days were over. Don't blame it on the child. I found myself raising my voice and quickly glanced at my grandson. He stood stiffly, his eyes downcast, as if he hadn't heard. I prompted my daughter to raise her face and spoke in a lowered voice. Besides, we're not prepared for this at all. And what about preschool? He's taking a break from preschool for future exams. Just don't ask any questions. Take care of him. I have to go back to my husband, but I promise I'll come and pick him up. Please. Please. She gripped my shoulder so painfully. She's so desperate. Feeling a sense of incongruity at Alice's behavior, I decided to take care of Glenn if she was begging like that. Thank you, Mom. Her face brightened and she hugged her son with a relieved expression. We'll come pick you up when we've settled down. Until then, stay here with your grandma and grandpa. It's okay. They're both very kind people. After comforting her son, she bowed to me again and left. Alone with my grandson, I knelt down to bring my gaze level with his. I asked in as cheerful and friendly a manner as I could. It's been a while, Glenn. You've grown a lot. How old are you now? I'm 4 years old now, he replied in a small voice, still expressionless. Oh dear, he must be nervous. Can't be helped. We haven't met since you were a baby. Come on, it's cold at the entrance. Come in. Yes, he said nervously. He entered the living room with a restless look. Sit anywhere. I'll bring you something warm. Is hot milk okay? Yes, but please don't trouble yourself. He used formal language. I tilted my head at his grown-up phraseology. As I warmed the milk in the microwave, I put a tea bag in my mug and poured in hot water. Returning to the living room with the 2 mugs, I was surprised to see him sitting on the floor with his backpack rounded. Hey, the floor is cold, isn't it? Come, the sofa is open. This is your mom's childhood home, so it's also your home. Make yourself comfortable, okay? When I handed him the hot milk, he said, "Thank you," and timidly sat down, only half sitting on the edge. I wonder how I can make him relax. As I thought hard, my gaze fell on the backpack at his feet. Hey, did you bring a change of clothes? May I take a look at what's inside your backpack? There might be his favorite toy or something inside. It could be a conversation starter. When I asked with a smile, Glenn handed me the backpack. Does that mean it's okay to look inside? There were a few sets of clothes, underwear, important items like health insurance cards and a mother and child health handbook in the backpack. There were no toys, but instead there was a pencil case and 3 toddler activity books. That's impressive. Are you working hard on your studies? Maybe his grown-up way of speaking is for school applications? My admiration made him nod slightly, biting his lip. I have never experienced elementary school admissions. I would think that it's enough for a child of this age to be able to write alphabet letters, but judging from his reaction, I guess not. I grimaced at the indescribable heartache. As soon as I impulsively reached out to pat his head, he visibly flinched. Seeing him turn his face away from me, shrink in an attempt to protect his head, I withdrew my hand. Oh, I'm sorry. It's scary when someone suddenly tries to touch your head, isn't it? I can't help but force a smile. He nervously looked up at me and muttered, "I apologize," in a small voice. Oh, I'm the one who should apologize. I'm sorry I startled you. You look like you've been out in the snow, so let's get a bath ready. I'll make lunch now. You can relax and do as you like, okay? As he slowly stood up, he nodded in silence, and as soon as I left the room, he started working hard on his activity book with a rustling sound. Seeing him like this, I can't help but frown. I wonder what kind of life my daughter and him have been leading. From the way he talks to the contents in his backpack and his attitude, it all makes me uneasy. Is it the pressure of school admissions? Anyway, I can't bear to see him so tense all the time. I'm going to be living with my adorable grandson for a while. I would love to see his innocent smile. I decided to change the lunch menu on the spot. I fried the shrimps I had bought, stir-fried the chicken and onions with rice, and sweet glaze for the carrots. As I was doing this, a voice announced that the bath was ready. I stopped my hand and called out to my grandson. "Glenn, the bath is ready." The activity book. You need to take a bath and warm yourself up first." With that said, a realization dawned on me. Wait, can you take a bath by yourself? Can you wash your own head and body? If it's too difficult, you might need to wait for your grandpa so he can help you. He should be home in a little while. But Glenn shook his head. "No, it's okay. I can take a bath by myself." Oh, he stopped using formal speech. I felt my cheeks relax at this unexpected change. Holding back a smile, I kindly said to him, "That's good to hear. I still have work to do in the kitchen, so you'll have to go in by yourself, okay? Take your time and warm up." I took him to the dressing area and handed him a towel. I showed him where things were, told him to press the call button in case of anything, and then gently closed the door. I could hear the sound of the shower. It seems like he's all right. I returned to the living room, my worries put at ease, and continued with my kitchen work. Side dishes that I haven't made in a dozen years line up on the kitchen worktop. As I finished arranging the various dishes onto the largest plate we had, I heard my grandson's footsteps as he entered the living room. Just as I was about to tell him that dinner would be ready soon, I heard the front door open. Soon after, my husband's surprised voice asked, "Whose shoes are these?" Glenn's shoulders trembled. "Hey, there's small shoes in the entrance. Who is the boy?" Jason stared in wonder when he entered the living room. "Welcome home. This is our grandson, Glenn. He's 4 years old now. Hasn't he grown? Alice brought him today, and she asked us to look after him for a while." I gently pushed his back. He bowed his head. Good evening." "Glenn, you've grown up a lot. Remember me? I'm your grandpa." Looking at my husband, who said this with a broad smile, he subtly looked at me. I smiled back at him. "I'm sure you're cold too. Take a bath before it gets cold." "Have you finished taking a bath, Glenn?" "Look closer. He's already done with his bath." After quickly sending off Jason, Glenn stared at us with a dumbfounded expression. And then, as if he let his guard down, he smiled softly. See, he's just a boy his age when he smiles. I seated him on a chair, and when I placed the plate and soup in front of him, his expression brightened. "This is... it's Grandma's special kids' lunch. Enjoy." It's a unique kids' lunch made with the skills I acquired from working in a diner. I even made a little flag to put up on the fried rice while he was in the bath. He immediately picked up the fork, and the moment he was about to take a bite, he paused as if he realized something. Then, with a frown, he asked me, "But I haven't done the drill yet, and I haven't got a perfect score." Huh? I didn't understand what my grandson meant, and I was at a loss for words. Soon, my husband came out, wiping his head. "Oh, it's a kid's meal. Looks tasty. Are you gonna eat?" "Ah, yes, studying is important, but a child shouldn't go hungry." Glenn, upon my husband's encouragement and my gentle words, our grandson slowly took a few grains of rice to his mouth with his fork and muttered, "Delicious," as if relieved. Just when I was relieved, my husband whispered something from behind me. "Hey, you haven't hurt yourself or anything, have you?" "What?" This was out of the blue. What is he talking about? "I'm as fit as a fiddle. I don't have a single crack on my skin. After all, if I hurt my fingers, it would affect my work, so I'm very careful." "Well, that's good then." While I was puzzled by my husband's forced laugh, I started preparing his meal. Afterward, we three gathered around the dinner table, but our grandson was nibbling on his food with restraint. "If it's too much, you don't have to force yourself, okay?" "Well, it's not that. If you eat slowly, you get full with a little amount, right? I always share and eat like that with Mom. I know." The food is so good. I want my mom to taste it." Share with Mom. My husband stood up quickly and walked out of the room, leaving me unable to understand Glenn's words. "Jason?" I hear his voice talking to someone in the distance. After a while, he came back, clutching his smartphone. Then he beckoned me to a corner of the room. "What's wrong?" "I called Alice's house." "That's unusual. He hardly ever calls our daughter." I dialed the landline, glad that she answered. What does he mean? Before I could ask, my husband continued with a serious look. Listen, don't raise your voice about what's about to happen, just stay calm. I didn't understand, but I felt a cold sweat running down my back from the intensity I had never seen in him before. With a smile, he kneeled next to our grandson and said gently, "Glenn, do you love your mom?" He nodded slightly. "Then, do you love your dad?" As soon as he asked that, Glenn bit his lip, looked down, and started trembling. "Glenn." When I rushed over, he looked at me as if he was desperate for help. "I understand. I'm sorry, Glenn. Your grandparents are on you and your mom's side. It's okay. Let me roll up your shirt a little." My husband rolled up his shirt. Seeing the numerous painful marks scattered on his soft skin, I swallowed my scream that was about to burst out. So many welts and scratches. Furthermore, blue and red bruises were scattered all over. My husband exhaled quietly and asked, holding his grandson who was tense and rigid, "Was it your dad?" Without uttering a word or nodding, he just let out big drops of tears and sobbed. I realized that was his answer. I couldn't believe this was happening. I was shocked by the unbelievable reality. "Hurry, let's go." When I looked up at the sound of Jason's voice, he had already put on his jacket and was holding his wallet and car keys. "Eh? Bring me last year's holiday card. We are going to Alice's place." In a flash, my husband was getting into the car. "Listen, it's the same with taxis. When you're alone in a private room with a dangerous client, you lose if you confront them head on. Here's the plan." While checking the address and map, he gave me instructions. The problem was what to do with our grandson. Considering the circumstances, I was debating whether or not to leave him at home, but he got into the car himself. "Going to Mom's place." There was a certain determination in his eyes. It is certain that my husband is an experienced driver. After confirming the address on the holiday card, he drove off smoothly without even inputting it into the GPS. During the ride, our grandson clenched his fists tight. It seemed that the trigger for my husband's suspicion was the trash bin in the laundry room. He found it strange to see a large amount of bandages discarded. Then he became sure after observing Glenn's behavior. When he called our daughter, she seemed restless and hung up quickly, saying she was busy. Don't you think that's strange? Even though we're the real grandparents, it's basically our first meeting and it's the first day we're taking care of him. Normally, if I contacted her at such a time, she would think that something had happened and ask about the current situation or express concern for her child. When he said that, it made sense. Judging from the state when we took him in, our grandson didn't seem to be scared of our daughter, and judging from her attitude, it doesn't seem like she left him with us because she found him annoying. I've told Alice we're coming over now, so she should leave the front door unlocked. Our daughter, who doesn't even have a driver's license, had made the long journey to our house, which is probably an hour by car, by changing buses and trains in the cold, snowing weather. Moreover, her son barely knows us. Just with that, I felt as though I could understand how isolated she must have felt. At the same time, I shivered at the memory of that seemingly nice son-in-law's face. How dare he does that to such a small child? The first time I visited my daughter's house, it appeared twice as large as ours, with an impressive gate that seemed to herald a grandeur beyond. When my grandson waved his hand near the sensor on the gate, it opened slowly. The front door was not locked. I felt like I had caught a glimpse of my daughter's true feelings, something she had never told us in words. "Where did you take our heir?" A pang of pain shot through my cheek. "My name is Alice. The man raging in front of me is my husband, Richard. He was always a bit domineering, but when Glenn was diagnosed with a developmental delay at his 3-year-old checkup, he seemed to transform into a different person. It was because I didn't raise him right. After being blamed for enrolling him in a preschool that I chose randomly, our son had stopped attending due to Richard's meddling and was forced into homeschooling. However, he became increasingly frustrated when Glenn wasn't able to achieve the desired results, and he began hurling hurtful words. Something must have snapped in Richard's mind when I interrupted his strict education, which was beyond the scope of discipline. He declared he would re-educate Glenn and me, and took away my smartphone. Then he began to use not only words but also his hands, and my son and I began living in fear of him. Upon hearing that remote work would start, we trembled with fear. Even now, when he goes out to work on weekdays, we are suffocating. But the idea of having the object of our fear in the house all day. While he was out, I secretly slipped out of the house and decided to take Glenn to the place where I feel the safest. I heard you had an important meeting, so I thought it would be rude to disturb you, so I left our son with an acquaintance. I made up an excuse I had prepared. It seemed to have taken a while for Richard to realize that Glenn was missing from home. Despite him being in the middle of remote work, he took the trouble to turn off his camera and audio to complain to me. From behind him, I could see his screen, and although I couldn't hear the audio because it was connected to his headphones, I could tell the meeting was still going on. You're already at the bottom as both a wife and a mother, and you're doing whatever you want. Because you spoil him like that, he doesn't grow up at all. Richard's arm twisted with vigor. Preparing myself for the pain that was to come, I stiffened my body, and then a shadow crossed my vision. My daughter is the best, and my grandson is growing up fine. It was my father. As my husband looked confused, he took his hand and moved it behind him using the techniques of Aikido. The computer was hidden behind my father's body. In the next moment, he had impressively taken away my husband's freedom with just one hand. Ouch! Why is your father here? Before we get to that, would you care to explain the comment you made to our daughter and the horrible marks on our grandchild's body? I was taken aback by the sudden turn of events. My father, who for many years has been dealing with all sorts of customers on his own, is a black belt in Aikido. For my husband, whose body has become sluggish due to his desk job, it was no match. Richard looked lost for a moment, but soon put on a good exterior with a calm expression. This is our issue. Please do not interfere with our family matters. Besides, you can see the computer, right? I'm in the middle of work, so please let go, he said without any malice. I sank down to the floor and Glenn ran up to me. When Richard turned his eyes to us, he showed a spine-chilling smile. Hey, can you tell them that we should not involve in-laws in our family matters? To us, who were emotionally and physically tortured, deprived of food and locked in a cold room, his words sounded nothing less than an order. Dad, let go. My words slipped out, and my father slowly let go of my husband. I don't know when she came in, but my mother was standing next to my father with her arms crossed. Richard opened the room door with an insincere gesture and prompted my parents to leave. Well, we should clear up the misunderstandings of you, but that will be for another day. First, you wouldn't want me to lose my current job, right? Please forget about today and go home. Don't take us lightly, all right? What? For us, these kids are more important than our jobs. After seeing our grandchild in this condition and experiencing such an attitude towards our daughter, there's no way we just go home. My mother took out her phone, tapped the screen, and the abusive language my husband threw at me earlier was played back. I've also taken photos of our grandson's body. I'm going to take these to the police as evidence. The blood drained from Richard's face at my mother's words. Police, isn't that overdoing it? It's just discipline. You call not feeding my daughter and degrading her humanity, causing your 4-year-old child's skin to be barely recognizable from the abuse. Discipline? When I made a kid's meal for him, he said he wants to feed it to his mom. Despite living in such a grand house, you can't even provide a proper meal for your own family? Under a barrage of criticism from my parents, my husband was left speechless. Now's the chance. I plucked up the courage to open my mouth. We can no longer follow your way, Richard. Please, let's get a divorce. What? At Richard's reaction, my body jerked involuntarily, like a reflex. In the past, I'd brought up the subject of divorce once before, but he had outright refused. The reason? He said it wouldn't look good. And even if we did divorce, he wouldn't give up custody of our son, saying that he was the heir. He even threatened to take away the jobs of my aging parents, so I gave up. But now, in this situation, I see a chance. Please, I want a divorce. If you free me and our child from you, I won't go to the police. Stop messing around. Who do you think you're talking to? At Richard's roar, our son squeezed his eyes shut. You're always so disrespectful. What do you think would happen to my reputation at work if I got divorced? I'm known as a family man there. We live in a good house, wear nice clothes. I even provide work for your retired parents, and our child is set on a path to success. I deserve gratitude, not complaints." When he had finally run out of breath from his outburst, my father then muttered expressionlessly, "Thank you for finally revealing your true colors." "What? Didn't you notice? When my husband used his technique on you, he turned on the microphone and camera on your computer." "What?" At my mother's words, Richard hastily ran to his computer. In his haste, he tripped on the headphone cord and it unplugged from his computer. You could hear the conversation from the other side of the monitor. Everyone was sidetracked from their work discussion. "No way. This isn't a prank, right? Isn't this bad?" Well, this is..." Even though he tried to give an awkward smile to the camera and explain, it was too late. Everyone stopped paying attention to the screen, and one by one, people started to log off until the screen went completely dark. That's when Richard's smartphone started to vibrate. Seeing the screen, he hastily grabbed his phone. "Hello? No, that was a little misunderstanding. No, so that was..." Could it be his boss? Leaving my desperate husband trying to make excuses, I headed to the front door with my son and got into my dad's car. In the silence, I muttered to the two sitting in front, "Thank you. Welcome home, Alice." As soon as she heard those words, she sniffled. I've lived for 65 years, and for the first time, I witnessed a terrible scene. Yet the presence of the lovely children sleeping in the back seat warmed my heart. Later, we used the savings that my husband and I had accumulated to hire a lawyer, and my daughter's divorce was successfully finalized. In addition to the child support and property division, we were able to claim damages for the terrible treatment that Alice and Glenn had received. Afterwards, we were able to learn about the fate of my son-in-law through information from the lawyer. There were not only colleagues, but also many executives who could influence future positions at the meeting that day, and it seemed that his way to success was blocked because his true character was exposed. His father, an executive, also heard about this incident and said that he would keep him in the company if he reflected on his actions, but it seemed that he had cut off familial ties. Furthermore, rumors are scary. He abused his wife and children and was taken to the police. He seems to have been arrested before, and other rumors started to circulate, and he was treated as a dangerous person. He seems to have no place in the company, but he cannot quit because he has to pay a large amount of money to my daughter and grandson, so he is said to be working in a difficult environment. In order to completely cut off contact with him, my husband handed the same amount that we had received for help to him, and I decided to quit my current job and start working at a local diner. By the way, my daughter also started working at the same place. She laughs that the meals are delicious and she has gained weight. She seems to have completely recovered. Recently, a healthy menu she came up with was a hit with female customers, and she is happy to receive a temporary bonus. As soon as the marks on my grandson's body healed, he transferred to a local public kindergarten. Because there are fewer children, it seems that they can carefully interact with each one, and I was surprised that the things he can do are increasing day by day. He doesn't seem to be very good at studying, but he likes crafting and makes works using waste materials whenever he has time. Thanks to that, our house is like a small museum. Even now, I still make kids' meals on my days off. Since he eats a full meal and even asks for seconds, it's a lot of work and volume, but I'm not bothered at all because the joy definitely outweighs it. Of course, I put up a flag every time I make it. A small flag handmade by my grandson. "This is you, Grandma." He drew a portrait of me on today's flag.